Hello Tacticians, it's Nox here, and today we're going to be looking at the new Guild Raid boss, who is the avatar of Khaine. But before we get into all the details around that, I just want to say my usual thank yous, and today they go to Revan89, Poop, Telemachus, Yes Nah Me Now, and Fardo. All of you have used my friend code, and it is very much appreciated, as it really does help me keep on top of things. So thank you once again. And now, let's have a look at the side bosses before we go into the main boss. First up is Aethana. Now, Aethana has the usual boss trait of immune, meaning they cannot be stunned, suppressed, or taunted, and they don't receive knockback damage. And of course, Aethana can fly, just like the one that we have. And she also has the Deep Strike, which will mean in the first turn we won't actually be able to attack her. Then they have the Swooping Hawk ability, just like our character. The Path of Command, which means you are going to have to watch out for the summons when you're fighting her. And the new one is the Wild Host, which reduces all incoming damage by 66%. Aethana loses health each time she is attacked. So this is yet another one where the more attacks you put in, the more damage that you're going to do. At the beginning of Aethana's turn, units on marked hexes will take a certain amount of projectile damage, and she then marks all hexes of units that attacked her last turn. So this means you're always going to have to be moving to avoid the damage that comes in. Now, bear in mind, it is only projectile, so it is only a 15% pierce ratio, so you may just be able to stand there and take the damage, depending on how well equipped your characters are. And the more damage that you do to Aethana means that the main boss will be affected in multiple ways. Either that the guardians spawned by the avatar of Khaine now have less health, damage and armour. The attack of the avatar is reduced by 15%. There's then 3 guardians removed from the battlefield. I imagine this will be the bare minimum you'll want to get to. Again, the next stage is the damage is reduced by another 15%. And again, the last one is reducing those guardians' health, damage and armour by a further 15%. And this is probably one of the maps that we are going to get when we're fighting Aethana. And there you can see Aethana is starting in Deep Strike, which means we can't actually harm her in the first round. So we'll probably do something like send forward Ravas with a few drones, and I don't know, let's kill some things. Now, all I really want to do is show you the abilities of Aethana, so I'm not going to go through the whole battle. And there is the Swooping Hawk sweep from Aethana, doing damage to a few of my units, but nothing too major. Now what we want to do, we want to get extra row back here, because obviously the more attacks that Aethana takes, then because of the Wild Host, she'll end up taking even more damage. Although it's not at the end of the turn like we've seen in the past. So we'll carry on attacking away here. And we'll just kill off some of these guys. Now, I know that probably the best way to do these things is to actually attack Aethana herself, but as I said, I just want to show all the abilities. So there's the marking, and indeed, it's not just limited to one attack of the Swooping Hawk attack. It looks like she can do it multiple times, which isn't too much of a surprise, given that, let's be honest, bosses are never really restricted to the same abilities that we had to deal with. So you can see those blue hexes which are targeted by Aethana next in her turn, but we're going to leave the battle here and go on to the next side boss. Again, Eldryon has the immune trait, which is no surprise, and of course the Psyker. Then Eldryon has Executioner, which is just like the Executioner in our own characters, and Doom, which again is the same. The new one is Phantasm, which means as long as there is a Phantasm, all incoming damage is reduced by, yes, you guessed it, 66%. If Eldryon becomes the target of an attack, when there is no Phantasm, he moves 2 hexes in a random direction and leaves a Phantasm behind. This movement can traverse impassable hexes and enemies and move between any elevation. So you're going to hit him, and then he's going to teleport away. When a unit moves onto the Phantasm, it is destroyed and Eldryon loses health. So this is effectively going to be a game of cat and mouse. And we're going to have to figure out exactly the best way to try and track him down. And of course, the more damage you do to Eldryon, the weaker the main boss gets. The first stage, the Molten Form damage is reduced by 33%. Then his armour is reduced by 15%. One Warlock is removed from the battlefield. The armour again is reduced by a further 15%, and I imagine this is going to be where you're going to want to get to at the bare minimum for those legendary levels. And then the final one is the Molten Form damage is reduced by yet another 33%. And here we have what a map with Eldryon may look like. So we're going to start off just by initiating an attack. And there you can see Eldryon darting away looking for safety. And we'll kill some of the ads just to see what happens here. Now we're going to move up with Rayvas and drop some drones, and one of them does indeed land on the Phantasm, which is quite a useful thing to know, because obviously it's free damage to Eldryon there. And we'll just carry on with this turn and finish and let Eldryon have a go. So there's the attack from the Skitarii Vanguard, and Eldryon's already moved. Now it's worth noting that if you don't step on the Phantasm and just move and attack, Eldryon will not move again. Of course, if you do step on the Phantasm, that's when Eldryon takes some additional damage and will move after an attack is made. So I guess if you play your cards right, you could have Eldryon darting all over the place and then being positioned next to someone else. Here, I obviously forgot that Eldryon isn't going to get damaged and moved, but that doesn't matter, we got a few attacks in anyway. We'll move him over there and take another shot for him to move. So you may wish to bear in mind that every time you do step on that Phantasm, Eldryon is going to take the damage and move again. So there may be situations like this where it will be beneficial not to stand on the Phantasm, just so you can get your units back in their rightful place. But we'll leave Eldryon here and we'll focus on the main event. And here is the Avatar of Khaine. Now, it also has immune, and unsurprisingly, it is a big target. But what may surprise some, if you're not aware of the lore, it is also considered a demon. It then has a number of abilities. The first is the Wailing Doom Sweeps, where it faces in one of 6 directions and sets a cone of hexes in range 2 in front of it on fire, dealing flame damage to all the enemies on affected hexes. At the beginning of its next turn, deal melter damage to all enemies on the affected hexes. So it's going to be a case of the floor is lava if you're literally standing in that fire. The Wailing Doom Strikes, where it faces in one of 6 directions and sets all hexes in a straight line, 2 hexes wide, and originating from the Avatar of Khaine on fire, and it again deals flame damage. And again, at the beginning of its next turn, it will change that flame to melter damage. So again, get off there as quickly as you can. It then has the Wrath of Khaine Unleashed. At the beginning of the Avatar of Khaine's next turn, deals 5 lots of fire damage to all enemies within 3 hexes that are not standing on healing hexes. Then extinguish all fire in the affected area and push all adjacent enemies back 1 hex. It then has Molten Form, which means Flame, Plasma and Melter damage against the Avatar of Khaine is reduced by 66%. It has the Bloody Handed, which means other friendly Eldari units are unstoppable, meaning they can quite happily walk through the fire, and they deal additional damage against enemies standing in fire. And finally, Blood Runs, Anger Rises and War Calls. At the end of the Avatar of Khaine's turn, summon 2 Guardian Defenders at one of the battlefield corners. And now, let's look at him in action. If you don't clear the side bosses, you'll be presented with a map very much like this, where you have 3 Eldar Guardians and 3 Eldar Warlocks. And of course, you're going to need to clear these as well as the summons that come in. So, let's have a look at the map when you do clear the 2 side bosses. And here is what the battlefield may look like if you do kill the 2 side bosses. So we're going to start by taking care of these 2 Warlocks because they're only going to cause trouble later on. And we'll move Rayvas forward and put him on Overwatch. So the Warlock moved in and Rayvas kills him off. So this is a decent enough point to start with. But there is the first attack, that sweep of the blade, which puts all the hexes on fire. Now, you do not want to be standing in the fire for the next attack, because all of this will change to melter damage, and it's going to do a ton of damage to your characters. So it's going to be really good to have characters such as Outtro, who have their unstoppable trait, meaning they can move through fire, or people with flying, such as Rayvas, who can fly out. Others, like Shosil, will have to hope they're at the edge, so they're not actually going to get affected by the fire, so they can move out one, or have a high enough toughness to just tough it out. But here we're going to move Tangida away. Now this Skitarii Vanguard is going to have a very bad day. And there's the second attack, the straight line. Now, the ones that are already on fire from the previous one are not the ones that are going to be changed to melter. It's this straight line that will. Now, with all of this fire on the battlefield, I'm actually wondering if Ahriman may be quite good to bring in, if you can cycle between his Doombolt and his normal attack, killing the guardsmen as they arrive. But, as I said before, having characters who can move through fire, I think, is still going to be an absolutely phenomenal ability to have, because they can dart in to attack and get out when they're in the way. Shosil's going to move across and fire, and he's standing in the fire, but he's not in the area which you can just about see the cracks under the ground, and this is what the molten is going to come from. We'll switch for Tangida's other ability to let all of these other ones surrounding him also attack. And there goes, well, one of the drones actually survived, but you saw the attack. And now this is the one I mentioned earlier. Anyone within range 3 will receive fire damage, which isn't the most dangerous of damage out there. So with some melee characters, you may just decide, you know what, I'm going to stay and take the hit. Other characters, such as Shosil, you might try and get away, because he's not so tough, and his sniper drones, which are next to him, should take the brunt of the attack. The last thing you can do is, of course, stand on the healing hex, which is where we're going to put Tangida, as he shouldn't be affected by this next attack because he's standing there. And we'll just kill this guardian with Actus. So now everyone within 3 gets a big hit. And as you saw, the 2 drones got killed, and there's the next sweep. So again, you need to get off that fire. The one thing that we have been told is that the order of these attacks will not be the same when the Avatar of Khaine comes to the live game. So we can't tell you which order or indeed how these attacks will be prioritised. All of the characters that I'm facing the Avatar of Khaine here are all level 50, but their abilities have been set to level 40, and they're all at Diamond 1. So whilst the damage I'm doing is not fantastic, at least you understand why it's not being fantastic. I didn't set these to Diamond 3 because I wanted to show you a more realistic version. You'll of course have your own characters where you are fully aware of what damage they can do. The one big thing which I haven't mentioned is, of course, you will not be able to use your Eldari characters here. So the favourites of Eldryon, Morgan Ra, are going to have to stay at home, as they're going to refuse to fight the Avatar of Khaine. There are plenty of other characters which are great to use. You have Marneus Calgar, Shosil, Rayvas, and of course the new Admech will all do wonderfully here. The one person that may replace Eldryon, though, is of course Asmodai. He is a melee character, and his ability will add damage on to the current turn and the next turn of combat or Overwatch attacks against a targeted unit. And of course you would be targeting the Avatar of Khaine here. You combine that with Ornn Shi, and that would be 4 turns where you're doing additional damage. Is it the best thing to do? I have no idea. I'm going to let you guys experiment and find out what works for you. If you like these videos, then it would be much appreciated if you at least think about using my friend code, as it really does help me out. Or if you or your guilds are looking for a new home, please reach out to any of the guilds shown, as we'll always welcome new people into our midst. As always, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll be seeing you on the battlefield.